Okay, ready? Good afternoon. I'm Grandmaster Calvin Chin, and I'd like to speak a little bit about traditional martial arts, how it's evolved, some of the misconceptions of martial arts, and some of the myths of martial arts. Most of us that are interested in traditional martial arts have this illusion and idea that traditional martial arts has been passed down for thousands of years. Although there may have been some form of martial arts thousands of years ago, when we think of traditional martial arts today, I think if you go back 300 years, you're already kind of reaching. You know, just like classical music, you go back 3 centuries and you probably see the beginning of the time of some of the great composers. With Chinese martial arts, if you take the traditional arts, if you went back 300 years, you probably wouldn't even have anything documented at that point. With traditional martial arts in the modern day, going back 100, 125 years is about as far as you can go with, you know, what I would consider the modern day masters. These are the teachers that became renowned and well known as people that have passed systems down. I, for one, have been practicing the Hong Kong style for a number of decades. In fact, I've been practicing martial arts for 57 years. So that's a question that, you know, sort of comes into mind, and students come to me and ask these questions, but, you know, they're very difficult to answer. But I know from my experience and my interaction with traditional teachers, my teacher especially, I could give you a bit of the background and why there is a lot of misunderstanding and lost in translation type of things. One of the things is that when we think of traditional martial, at least when I think of traditional martial, I can go back as far as maybe Wang Fei Hong, maybe his dad. So that would bring us back maybe 5 generations, a generation being about 20 years. So, you know, going back to that time, we could see that in our style, the tiger crane form was created by Wang Fei Hong. You know, that's somewhat documented, and through people that have learned along the way could confirm that. The tiger crane form is one of our pillar forms. Gong is another one of the pillar forms. So if tiger crane was created by Wang Fei Hong, it doesn't go back that far. Although it's one of the pillar forms of the Hong Kong or Hong Ga system, it's practiced globally by all Hong Ga practitioners. Now, Gong may have a different path. The origins of that is from the Shaolin Temple. But, you know, is it within the same sequence or context? We don't really know. We just know that this has been passed down from generation and taught a certain way. Now, as traditional martial arts came into the limelight probably in the 40s and 50s, where there's an interest in probably teaching on more, not quite a commercial level, but teaching on a level of teaching students and then differentiating between student and discipleship and indoor students. Indoor students and disciples are essentially the same. What it is, they're a selected group of people that the teacher either favors or they have a relationship. And, you know, that's really important in the traditional sense, because that's how they pick the people that would carry on their tradition. Now, many people that were learning back in, you know, the 40s and 50s, not everyone was entitled to learn every single form. In fact, a lot of forms were somewhat filtered or even taught to different individuals at different speeds, different times, or maybe different forms for different individuals. Not everyone had to learn everything. So there's sort of what happens when you get a student that doesn't get to learn something. You don't really have a choice of what you'll learn. It's what the teacher decides he wants to teach you. So, you know, technology is one of those things that allows us to look back. We think of it as looking forward all the time, but it allows us to look back and then allow us to understand, you know, how people have learned and see the discrepancies of movement, especially on YouTube, different practitioners doing the same forms. And most practitioners would view that and question who's doing it right, what's the correct way of doing it, and those answers are never answered because no one really knows, except for the higher level teachers that can actually explain it and take you through it based on principle. Now, not all students are created equal, and not all students were able to learn the same information equally. So learning without principle leaves you floundering and not understanding what you're actually striving for. So what's missing actually is the translation or the interpretation or the understanding of what your movements are within the form. Forms are just sequences. We learn through mimicking the movement, like you can learn on YouTube by copying the movement with the best of your ability. But without the verbal transmission, which is explaining to you why you do something a certain way, why there's a structural integrity in a certain position, why we have certain postures that end up in a certain position, are not explained, so it's not clear. So you'll see people doing forms that have hand position, arm positions, you know, all over the place. It's not a random thing, it's actually very specific. But that specificity of positioning isn't defined by all practitioners. Only the skillful masters that have gone through that specific type of training are the ones that truly understand it. And if the teacher is willing, then he would pass this information down to you and guide you through the movements. So learning, the first stage is actually copying the movements. The second stage is to have a teacher that's knowledgeable and has been trained traditionally from, you know, the ancestors of the arts to give you the right guidance. That's where private lessons or workshops that actually work on those specific ideas would be helpful. Now, you know, when we talk about, you know, learning forms, they're only sequences. What they do is they house the movements that are so defined and so critical of the specific style. And, you know, why are there so many styles that are created? It's because a lot of the people that I'm talking about that went from one teacher to another teacher to another teacher, not learning depth of knowledge, but learning volumes of forms, start to blend their forms and then create new styles. That's the evolution of styles. Every style comes from a source, a mother system. So whether it's Shaolin or Wudong, the approach is the same. Wudong and Mudong are the same areas of China that practice Tai Chi, Bagua, and Xingyi. And it would be Batgua, Yingyi, and Taigit. Those are the different dialects. Some people get confused because they think it might be something different, but it's really phonetics. Shaolin and Xiaolian are the same place. So those are what they call the, you know, whether it's northern or southern Shaolin, are the areas that these forms were supposedly brought out to the mainstream, to the public. Now, if we understand that, you know, as things are passed down, it started with one form. So as these single forms came down, it evolved and different styles were created. Without getting into how or why certain styles do certain things a certain way, I can only speak to what I practice, and I practice Hong Kun. I also practice Wu style Tai Chi, and we also practice Wudong Yat Hi Ng Hang Mon, which is a system who would have its roots in Wudong or Muong, plus you know, mixing of systems from Bagua or Batgua and Xingyi or Yingyi Kun. So those are forms that were created along the way. And these forms are forms that capture the essence of a single style. And combining them creates a system that allows you to practice their methodology through their forms. So without going further about styles, I'd just like to say that a lot of times people try to reinvent the wheel. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. We know the wheel is round and it rolls. Why do we make it anything else? Anything else other than round, it won't actually roll. So it either rolls backwards or forwards. Sometimes you have to move backwards before you move forward, but as you move forward, we can see that technology is something that can help us learn. In a global society where traditional martial arts is practiced by so few people and so few masters that actually, at a level that can teach depth of knowledge, the only way you can get that is probably through interaction with the teacher. With technology today, we can do it on the phone, we can do it through video, we can do it through video conferencing, and we can do it through live streaming. And that's something that I've started to approach in with a technological sense, that streaming is something that is a valuable tool to not just businesses in general, but it's also a valuable tool for us as a traditional school located in Newton, Massachusetts. We could reach anyone in any part of the world as long as you have Wi-Fi connection. And we can actually, or whoever wants to learn can access it. Now, can someone learn through videos? Absolutely, you can learn forms through video, and it's easier if you have a foundation. Very difficult if you have never studied anything, because you won't really realize how much effort you have to put in and how much insight you need to recognize movement on video. But with that said, video, I'll remind you, that is two-dimensional. You can only see movement, as it is in a flat plane, so you can't see the dimensional changes in movement. So you can learn sequence and you can follow. Now, I realize from teaching, over the years, that when someone's present and in front of you and working with you, you have a dialogue, and you can see, the weaknesses and discrepancy of the individual. When you're learning on video or you're learning through streaming, unless it's being shot live and there's live interaction, you can only copy the movements without any feedback. So in that instance, you have to copy it until you somewhat, absorb and memorize the movement. It does take a long, long time for you to see it and do it, see it and do it, but you develop a knack for it, like you would develop a knack for memorizing a song by listening to it often and then trying to recite or sing the lyrics. So, your movements are like the lyrics, and the visuals are what you try to capture. Now, what's good with streaming is that we can actually connect with you and explain the strategy of what's missing with traditional martial arts that causes everyone to look so different. The difference is because there's no verbal transmission. Sometimes it's lost in translation because of the language barrier. It could be lost in translation because of misinterpretation, because of the level of understanding. So by having some type of a dialogue or being able to communicate through live streaming, we can connect on this level. But the other thing is, as you learn, I actually have realized that tutorials have to be broken down so that each piece can be taught and you can follow it piece by piece, broken down into segments and allowing the individual to absorb, at a slow rate. Most of the time, what you see on video or YouTube is much too fast. It's too quick for the eye, even if you slow it down. But then, with the streaming, when you slow it down, it starts to pixelate, it starts to break up. You really can't get a good image of what you're trying to see. So the best way is to get the teacher who's filming it to slow it down so you see it in real time, allowing you to absorb that information on a physical level, mimicking the movements as you do with anything else that you learn, and then wait for the interpretation and the dialogue from the teacher that's teaching that specific motion, and then you'll begin to understand. But bear in mind that memorizing sequence and understanding the movement are two different phases of learning. And you have to break it into those chapters in order to learn, and you have to be patient, because a lot of people think they know and understand by just seeing, but we as humans don't learn that way. And if you bring science to how we learn and science to how we need to practice, it just substantiates and reinforces that we need to do things over and over again. We need to repeat the movement, and while we're repeating the movement, have enough guidance so that we don't create such bad habits that it's impossible to break unless you go through the reversal of all of that. That's going backwards, relearning everything that you already learned wrong. So that's harder to learn than to learn, directing and moving forward with the right content, the right information, and the right guidance. So, the reason why I'm having this discussion is to give anyone who really wants to learn traditional martial arts to realize that there is opportunity to learn traditional Hong Kong by the system that we have already established and set up, that we've worked with and proven over the last year and a half. It's not some idea that we thought of. It was an idea in the beginning, but today it's something that we've already implemented, and we can, in fact, serve you if you're willing to find out more about what we're doing. So with the next tutorial, I'll probably explain a little bit more about how it works. And our website, actually, if you look at calvinchin.com, there'll be some tabs up on top. And there's live streaming. When you go to live streaming, some of it's for members and some of it's for people that are non-members that are willing to go through the process. That's actually something that you can try. There's a 2-week trial to give you an idea what type of content is on there. And once you subscribe, we can connect through email, and when we have live streaming, we can do that, and we can interact when we do a live session. So that's something that we can be more detailed with as we move on.